Osho on Hakim Sanai, the enlightened Sufi master of Islamic mysticism. Hakim Sanai is unique, truly singular in the world of Islamic Sufism. No Sufi devotee ever reaches the profound heights and depths that he did. Hakim Sanai accomplished nearly the impossible. If I were to rescue two books from the realm of mystics, I would choose these two. One from the meditative world, the Xin Ming, The Path of Awakening by Sultan, which I have read and found to contain the very essence of meditation and awakening, and the other, Hadiqa Tu'l Haqiqat, The Walled Garden of Truth by Hakim Sanai. The Hadiqa is the pure fragrance of the path of love. Just as Sultan captures the soul of meditation, Hakim Sanai encapsulated the soul of Sufism. Books of this sort are not written, they are born. No one has the capacity to create them by mere intellect. They are not products of the mind but come from on high. They are gifts, mysteriously birthed like a child, a bird, or a rose. They come to us as precious presents. There is a beautiful story about the mysterious appearance of this magnificent book. Bahram Shab, the Sultan of Ghazna, led his army on a campaign to conquer India. Among his retinue was Hakim Sanai, the celebrated court poet. As they marched, they passed a vast, walled garden. The Sultan, pressed for time with his mighty army in tow, was intent on his conquest. Yet something mysterious forced him to stop, an occurrence he could not avoid. A song rose from within the garden, capturing his attention. A connoisseur of music, the Sultan had never heard such a sound before. Despite having many talented musicians, singers, and dancers in his court, nothing compared to this ethereal melody. Though he heard it from outside, the Sultan ordered his troops to halt. It was mesmerizing. The combined sound of dance, music, and song was so otherworldly, as if someone had doused him in wine. The Sultan was utterly intoxicated. This phenomenon seemed not of this world at all. Surely something transcendent from the heavens was reaching down to the earth, or some mysterious realm beyond the known was attempting to communicate with our world. He had to pause and listen. There was an ecstatic quality in that sound, so sweet yet achingly painful, as if it were tearing his heart apart. Though the Sultan yearned to press on and reach India swiftly, after all, it was the perfect time to conquer his enemies. He could not. A powerful, strange, irresistible allure emanated from that sound, compelling him to enter the garden. Inside, he encountered Lai-Khur, a great Sufi mystic who, among the people, was known as a drunkard, a madman. Lai-Khur is one of the most revered names. Such men leave few traces beyond this singular story. Yet for generations, Lai-Khur has lived on in the collective memory of Sufis. He continues to haunt the Sufi world because no one else like him can ever be found. He was so intoxicated, so enraptured with the divine, that it is no insult to call him a drunkard. He would be in a state of ecstatic intoxication for 24 hours straight, drunk with the divine. He walked as if in a stupor, completely oblivious to the world, and his manner of speech was, by all accounts, mad. This is the ultimate peak of ecstasy, a state of being that only mystics can truly understand. To the common crowd, his outward expressions may appear irrelevant or as mere babbling. To the uninitiated, his behavior seems offensive, mocking tradition, and defying social decorum. Essentially, all that is recognized and understood as religion. But to those who truly understand, his expressions are as precious as pure gold. Hakim Sanai can only be approached by a select few, for only a chosen handful can ascend to the heights at which he dwells. He lives atop the Everest of consciousness, above the clouds. Only those with the luck and courage to climb this mountain can grasp his words. To the masses he appears mad. To the enlightened, He is merely a vessel of God, and everything that manifests through him is truth, nothing but truth. The Invisible Way: How Lai-Khur chose infamy to remain unseen. Lai-Khur deliberately made himself infamous. That was his method of becoming invisible in the eyes of the crowd. Sufis always employ a very peculiar technique to remain unseen. They continue to exist in the world. They do not escape from it, but they intentionally create an aura around themselves so that people no longer seek them out. The curious, the fools, will no longer look for them. The Sufi does not exist for them, and they eventually forget him. This is the ancient method that Sufis have long used to instruct their disciples. Lai-Khur purposely made himself notorious, choosing to be visible only from a distance. A master who truly wishes to impart his work, who intends his teachings to carry deep meaning, must render himself invisible to those who are not genuine seekers. This is what Gurdjieff once said, and indeed Gurdjieff learned several lessons from Lai-Khur during the years he spent with Sufi masters before becoming a teacher himself. In many ways, you will soon notice striking similarities between Gurdjieff and Lai-Khur. Lai-Khur even called for wine and celebrated the blindness of Sultan Bahramshah. For the first time, this mystic openly called for wine, a practice strictly forbidden for devout believers, since consuming wine is one of the gravest sins for a Muslim, as it contravenes the Quran and the religious ideals of a saint. Yet Lai-Khur not only embraced wine, but also used it to mock the blindness of Sultan Bahramshah. Surely that sultan must have been driven to madness. He must have been furious. How dare someone call him blind? Yet, despite the storm raging within him, he remained silent. That beautiful sound and dance continued to haunt the sultan. It lingered in his heart and transported him into another realm. But his ministers and courtiers objected vehemently. When opposition arose, Lai-Khur laughed maniacally and declared that the sultan deserved to be blind for embarking on such a foolish quest. What can you possibly conquer in this world? Everything must be left behind. The very notion of conquest is utterly foolish, completely absurd. Where do you think you are going? You are blind. The true treasure lies within you, he proclaimed. And yet you set off for India, wasting not only your own time but the time of others. What more proof is needed of your blindness? This sultan is blind. If he were not, then prove it. Command your army to return. Abandon all these conquests and never begin another. All such pursuits are meaningless. The sultan was impressed but found himself unable to turn back. Surely a similar situation had occurred before. When Alexander the Great marched to conquer India, another mystic, Diogenes, had mocked him. That mystic asked, "Why? For what purpose do you undertake such a long journey? What will you gain by conquering India or even the entire world?" And Alexander replied, "I wish to conquer the world so that, in the end, I may rest, relax, and enjoy life." Diogenes laughed and said, "You are a fool, for I am already resting here." At that moment, Diogenes was resting, relaxing by the riverbank. It was early morning and he was bathing naked on the sand. He said, "I am resting and relaxing, and I have never even thought of conquering the world. So if you embark on a conquest solely to be able to rest and relax, that is utterly meaningless, for I rest without having to conquer anything. And this riverbank is vast enough. It has room for both of us." Divine Rebirth: Hakim Sanai's Satori, the pilgrimage to Mecca, and the gift of the Hadiqa. Similar events likely occurred with Sultan Bahram Shah, and undoubtedly Lai-Khur acted in the same manner. In this world, there are only two kinds of people, those who know and those who do not. The same story repeats itself. Sometimes even Alexander the Great plays the role of the blind one, with Diogenes trying to awaken him. At other times, it is Lai-Khur who seeks to rouse Sultan Bahramshah. Alexander once said, "I apologize. I can understand your meaning, but I cannot turn back. I must conquer this world. Without conquest, I cannot rest. Forgive me." And you are right. I admit it. A similar exchange occurred with Bahramshah. He was filled with sorrow and shame, yet he declared, "Forgive me. I must go. I cannot turn back. India must be conquered. I will not rest or sit still until I have conquered India." There even arose a blessing known as the blindness of Hakim Sanai, for he was the closest confidant of Sultan Bahramshah, a counselor, a poet, the wisest man in the court whose renown spread far and wide. He was a consummate poet, a man of profound wisdom and greatness. Some even vehemently protested this blessing because, by all accounts, Hakim Sanai was of impeccable character, virtuous, devout, and possessing an unerring conscience. He lived his life with clear-eyed sobriety, at least in his own estimation. While Sultan Bahramshah might have been blind, driven by greed, ambition, and a desperate desire to possess everything, this could never be said of Hakim Sanai. Though he held a revered place in the royal court, Sanai lived simply, humbly, and with an immense inner strength and wisdom. Yet Lai-Khur maintained that the blessing was indeed justified, for Sanai appeared unaware of the true purpose for which he had been created. When presented before the Creator and asked to reveal his inner self, Sanai could only muster a few meaningless praises for the foolish kings, miserable souls like the blind Sultan Bahramshah. Lai-Khur argued that expectations for Hakim Sanai were far higher than those for the Sultan. Possessing immense potential, Sanai was wasting it by offering empty flattery to foolish monarchs. He could not face God. He would falter, unable to answer his own inner call. All he could produce was this poem, written in praise of foolish kings like the blind Bahramshah. In doing so, he became even more blind, utterly, completely blind. Then, as he listened to these words and gazed into the eyes of the mad Lai-Khur, something miraculous occurred within Hakim Sanai. Satori, a sudden, unexpected enlightenment. In that instant, something within him died, and something entirely new was born. In a single moment, a transformation took place. He was no longer the man he had been. This madman had truly penetrated the depths of his own soul. He had awakened himself. In the history of Sufism, this is the only instance of Satori, a sudden, non-linear enlightenment that did not unfold step by step, but occurred all at once. Deeply aware of the mystery, Hakim Sanai knelt down, touched the feet of this mad Lai-Khur, and wept with joy, knowing he had finally come home. He had, in a sense, died and been reborn. That is the essence of Satori, to die and be reborn, to experience true rebirth. Following this awakening, Hakim Sanai departed from Sultan Bahramshah and embarked on a pilgrimage to Mecca. The Sultan was not ready to let him go and tried every means to prevent his departure. He even wished to marry his own sister and bestow half his kingdom upon Sanai. But now, all such matters were rendered meaningless. Hakim Sanai simply laughed and declared, "God is no longer blind. I thank your majesty, but my time is done. This madman has ended the divine self with a single, decisive blow." And so he set out on his pilgrimage to Mecca. When later asked why, he replied, "Only to receive and digest what that madman bestowed upon me so abruptly. It was too overwhelming. It left me dizzy. It needed to be assimilated. He gave me more than I deserved." Thus, Hakim Sanai sought the sanctuary of Mecca to reflect, to attain inner silence, and to become an anonymous pilgrim unknown to the world. What had happened needed to be internalized. The light had shone, but one must become accustomed to it. When he had familiarized himself with this new form, a new version of himself, he returned to meet Lai-Khur and presented his book, the Hadiqa. This was the work he composed on his journey back from the holy Mecca. He poured all his experience, all his satori into that book. Every word is steeped in enlightenment. This is how a great book is born, mysteriously, like a child, like a seed that becomes a tender sprout, like a fledgling emerging from its egg, like a bud unfolding in the early light and blooming into a flower, its fragrance carried by the wind. Yet this book was not written in the conventional sense. It is a gift from God, a divine gift, the expression of Hakim Sanai's profound gratitude to the mad Lai-Khur. The garden, the desert, and the bridge, Sufi methods, inner richness, and ultimate renunciation. You cannot sculpt a Sufi, for a statue cannot capture that person's dance, nor can it express the song, love, prayer, or gratitude of that soul. The ecstatic madness of a Sufi cannot be rendered in stone. A statue may be carved for the contemplative observer, a figure that is silent, cold, and empty. Such emptiness holds a purity. It is truth itself, yet something is missing. It lacks richness, it lacks life, it lacks ecstatic joy. This is what befalls those who traverse the via unitiva, the path of blissful union. Like two lovers embracing and merging, not merely in body but also in spirit, a union is born. Two individuals become one. And when these two merge in truth, three entities unite: the lover, the beloved, and love itself. Love is a phenomenon far more substantial than the mere existence of the lover and the beloved. In fact, the two pale in comparison to the reality of love. It is love that gives life its ultimate depth. Therefore, when lovers come together, it is as if three forces converge. To symbolize this, in India, there is a sacred place called Prayag, where it is said that three rivers meet, two visible and a third that is invisible. One is the Ganges, undoubtedly tangible. The second is the Yamuna, equally so. And the third is Saraswati, unseen by any eye. It exists, yet you must have faith in its presence. It is invisible. To the scientific mind, such a notion seems absurd. How can there be an invisible river? No one has ever seen it. Yet Hindus insist that three rivers converge, two from this world and a third from another realm. The two belong to the earth, while the third ascends from above. This is a metaphor for love. When two lovers meet, three forces come together, three streams of energy, two from this earth and one from the heavens. The lover and the beloved are visible, but love itself cannot be seen, a force far more valuable than either. In reality, it is because of that unseen heavenly source that the two merge, and it is that very source that causes their individual identities to dissolve. And when both vanish, the third too dissipates, but in an altogether different manner. That is why Sanai calls his path the Hadiqa, the garden. The path of meditation or contemplation is like a desert. The desert has its own unique beauty. At night, it offers a cool, incomparable atmosphere and an all-encompassing, endless silence. It possesses its own flavor. Under a star-filled sky, solitude in the desert is unlike any loneliness found elsewhere. Nowhere on earth is there solitude and stillness as profound as in the desert. With nothing to distract you, every mile looks the same. Even when you gaze upon the horizon, nothing changes. You see nothing new. If you have seen one desert, you have seen them all. The same landscape stretches unvaryingly to the horizon, without distraction. This is why many meditation masters have chosen to live in the desert. Through the ages, many have relocated there. Its allure lies in the tranquility and the beauty of an undisturbed setting. Yet a garden is diverse, filled with many trees, lush canopies of green leaves, vibrant flowers in myriad colors, birds singing, streams flowing, and the gentle murmur of water and wind through pine branches. A garden overflows with life, whereas a desert is barren. The inner being of a meditator may become like a desert, while that of someone in love blossoms like a garden. Thus, Sanai names his work the Hadiqa, the garden. However, this depends on you. One might favor the desert over the garden, and that will be your path. There is nothing wrong with it. You must follow the path that resonates with your inner nature. Look within yourself and recognize your potential, your capacities, and your inclinations. For one person, the desert may serve as a garden, while for another, the garden might feel like a desert, since what nourishes one may be poison to another. Sanai himself asserted that the world of the lover is far richer, because the lover speaks of his own inner world. Remember that. Yet keep this in mind. Every master has warned that there are pitfalls on both paths. The danger is that you might get stranded on the bridge. A meditator can become so enamored with his practice that he becomes stuck on the bridge, and similarly, a lover may become so absorbed in love that he too is stranded. Love is a bridge, and meditation is also a bridge. But you must transcend that bridge. At the highest state, the meditator must relinquish his meditation, and the lover must let go of love. Otherwise, you will merely hover near the threshold without ever stepping into the temple. You must forget the method. The Buddha said that every method is like a raft or a boat. Use it to reach the other shore, then leave it behind, forget it, and continue on your path. There is no need to carry that raft in your mind. If you keep thinking of it, you are a fool. And yet, this is precisely what is happening. Millions become addicted to their methods. These methods can be addictive, for they offer many beautiful experiences. But the final barrier is the method itself, the bridge. Understand the key point, however paradoxical it may sound. The bridge carries you to the other shore. Of course, it is useful, and you should be grateful to it. But it can also become a problem. You might come to love the bridge and even build a home upon it. And if you start living on the bridge, you belong neither to this shore nor to that shore. You become a prisoner. Too many so-called faithful live as prisoners, caught between worlds. They become addicted to the bridge, and yet the bridge is beautiful. Therefore, every seeker must know from the start. One day you must abandon the method that has aided you. When your work is complete, do not carry it with you even for a moment. Once you are healed, discard all your remedies. If you continue to use them, they will become your illness. All methods are merely methods. All means are just means. And if you wish to reach the ultimate, you must renounce every method and means. That is the only way to enter the supreme state. The lover must forget everything about love, and the meditator must forget everything about meditation. There comes a moment when the meditator no longer meditates because he has become meditation. Likewise, there comes a moment when the lover ceases to love because he has become love. No one can be separated from love. Love becomes their very being. They have forgotten all about it. Sanai is one of my love stories. No matter how much I wish to extol him, I simply cannot overstate his greatness. It is beyond exaggeration. Sanai embodies the very essence of Sufism. Sufism is the English term for tasawwuf. Tasawwuf means pure love. The word Sufism derives from suf, meaning wool, and a Sufi is someone who wears a woolen cloak. Sanai once donned a black hat along with a white cloak and that same black hat. It may seem illogical without any apparent reason, just the mark of a madman like myself. But what can you do? Such individuals must be accepted as they are, whether you love them or hate them. Love or hate, it changes nothing. You may support or oppose them, but you cannot remain indifferent to them. That is the true wonder of the mystics.